The mystery religion of Babylon, ladies and gentlemen, has been symbolically described in the last book of the Bible as a woman arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. The phone is not now. This is insanity. Absolute insanity. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And that's from Revelations chapter 17, verses 1 through 6. When the Bible, ladies and gentlemen, uses symbolic language, a, quote, woman, unquote, can often symbolize a church. The true church, for example, is likened to a bride, a chaste virgin, a woman without spot or blemish. Check Ephesians chapter 5, verse 27, and Revelations chapter 19, verses 7 and 8. But in striking contrast to the true church, the woman of the text is spoken of as an unclean woman, a defiled woman, a harlot. If it is correct to apply this symbolism to a church system, ladies and gentlemen, then it becomes clear that only a defiled and fallen church could be meant. In big capital letters, the Bible calls her, quote, Mystery Babylon, unquote. Now, when John wrote the book of Revelation, Babylon as a city had already been destroyed and left in ruins, as the Old Testament prophets had foretold. And you can find that in Isaiah chapter 13, verses 19 through 22, and Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 52. But though the city of Babylon was destroyed, folks, religious concepts and customs that originated in Babylon continued on and were well represented in many nations of the world and exist in secret right up to this very day. Now, just what was the religion of ancient Babylon? How did it all begin, and what significance does it hold in modern times? How does it all tie in with what John wrote in the book of Revelation, if at all? How many of you were aware that the Iraqis have been busy for many years rebuilding the city of Babylon? Turning the pages of time back to the period shortly after the flood, men began to migrate from the east. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Genesis chapter 11, verse 2. It was in this land of Shinar that the city of Babylon was built, and this land became known as Babylonia, and later as Mesopotamia. Originally, it was a part of the Assyrian nation. Now here, ladies and gentlemen, is where the Euphrates and Tigris rivers had built up rich deposits of earth that could produce crops in great abundance. But there were certain problems, you see, the people faced. For one thing, the land was overrun with wild animals, which were a constant threat to the safety and peace of the inhabitants. And you can check for reference Exodus chapter 23, verses 29 and 30. Obviously, anyone who could successfully provide protection from these wild beasts would receive great acclaim from the people. For all people in all times seek security. It was at this point that a large, powerfully built man by the name of Nimrod appeared on the scene. He became famous as a mighty hunter against the wild animals. And the Bible tells us, quote, And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth, He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, unquote. Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 and 9. Now apparently Nimrod's success as a mighty hunter caused him to become famous among those primitive people. He became a, quote, mighty one, unquote, in the earth, a famous leader in worldly affairs. Gaining this prestige, he devised a better means of protection. Instead of constantly fighting the wild beasts, why not organize the people into cities and surround them with walls for protection? Then, why not organize these cities into a kingdom? What a great idea. Evidently, this was the thinking of Nimrod, for the Bible tells us that he organized just such a kingdom. Quote, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar, unquote. Genesis chapter 10, verse 10. The kingdom of Nimrod is the very first government mentioned in the Bible. Whatever advances may have been made by Nimrod would have been well and good, but Nimrod, you see, was an ungodly ruler. The name Nimrod, ladies and gentlemen, comes from marad and means, quote, he rebelled, unquote. Sound familiar? Wasn't Lucifer, an angel of light, tremendous knowledge, who rebelled against God and was thrown down to the earth to be the ruler of the material world? Well, the word Nimrod means, quote, he rebelled, unquote. The expression that he was a mighty one, quote, before the Lord, unquote, can carry a hostile meaning. You see the word before being sometimes used as meaning against the Lord. The Jewish Encyclopedia says that Nimrod was he who made all the people rebellious against God. That's taken directly out of the Jewish Encyclopedia. Let me say it again for you. Quote, he who made all the people rebellious against God, unquote. The noted historian Josephus wrote, now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God. The multitudes were very ready to follow the determination of Nimrod, and they built a tower, neither sparing any pains nor being in any degree negligent about the work. And by reason of the multitude of hands employed in it, it grew very high. The place wherein they built the tower is now called Babylon, and those who built it were called the builders. And they still exist, ladies and gentlemen, today. Basing his conclusions on information that has come down to us throughout history, legend, and in mythology, a man by the name of Alexander Hislop has written in detail of how Babylonian religion developed around traditions concerning Nimrod, his wife Semiramis, and her child Tammuz. Now, Alexander Hislop wrote this, the results of his research, in a book called The Two Babylons, and I suggest strongly that you make every attempt to get that book and read it. It will open your eyes if you have an understanding of the symbology of the esoteric religion of Mystery Babylon and the secret societies today, which I have revealed to you through the Mystery Babylon series on this radio broadcast. It is important that we understand who these people are and what they believe. It makes no difference whatsoever whether you believe it or disbelieve it. If they hold the powerful positions of the world, if they are pulling the strings that make you dance, then whatever they believe affects you. Make no mistake about that.